I never imagined I'd find love with a paralyzed widow until her strength changed my life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The phone call shattered my heart. My mother, breathless and choked up, told me about the accident. A single moment, and everything shifted. My world became dark, heavy. I sat alone in my car, tears mingling with the rain, feeling the pulse of pain throbbing in my chest. That's when I met Mia. She was sitting by the edge of the park, her wheelchair parked just off the pathway like a secret in the shadows. I was drawn to her, not just by her beauty, though it was striking with her dark curls framing her elegant face, but by something deeper. It was as if an invisible thread pulled me into her orbit. She held a paintbrush between her trembling fingers, colors smeared across her palette like splashes of chaos. In that moment, I realized all her movements were deliberate, each stroke a testament to resilience. Jake, my best friend, would often say that people like Mia had a unique fire inside them. I didn't understand that until I saw her create. Her laugh broke the stillness, vibrant and startling, echoing through the crisp air. It made my heart quicken. The other park-goers seemed to fade away, their whispers and glances lost in the background of my fascination. I approached cautiously, afraid to shatter this moment, afraid she'd disappear like a fleeting dream. "Mia," I said, my voice tremorous. "What's your story?" She paused, her gaze piercing. "It's a long one." Her eyes danced with a mix of sorrow and defiance, and I knew it was a story worth hearing. I felt drawn into her world of shadows. Days passed, and I kept returning to that park. Each encounter laid bricks of connection, making a foundation I had never expected. She'd tell me how the accident stole her legs, but never her spirit. I watched her paint. Her hands moved with a fluidity that defied her condition. Each color was a testament, a fierce battle cry against the pain of her past. But things weren't simple. Mia had demons lurking just beneath her surface. Memories haunted her like restless ghosts. I could see the way she would sometimes pull away, her eyes clouded with grief or fear. It terrified me, how deeply I felt for her, for someone who seemed so far away and yet so close. One day, as we sat together beneath the old oak tree, she whispered something that sent chills through me. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything," she said. Tears welled in her eyes, trembling like fragile leaves in a storm. I wanted to reach out, to pull her into my embrace, but I hesitated. I didn't know if I would be strong enough to hold her weight, the weight of her past. I shivered at the thought of her isolation, the silence she endured, and how it seeped into her art. It was both beautiful and haunting. But then, she shared a secret I never expected, a talent that made my breath catch. "I know how to feel things, how to express them," she said. "It's just letting it out that scares me." The intensity of her words filled the air like static electricity. I sat there, heart racing, wondering if my presence was part of her healing. Yet, what if I was just a shadow in her light? And then, in a sudden twist, she leaned in close, her lips just inches from mine, and the world faded. "Promise me you won't leave." Her voice was a whisper, barely audible above the rustling leaves. My heart skipped. It echoed in my mind like a vow. I wanted to promise her everything. But in that moment, with uncertainty tethering us, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, words caught like stones. What did she see in me? What was I willing to risk? My mind spun, caught between fear and desire, hope and doubt. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, I knew that everything was on the brink of change. But as I watched her, breathless and breathtaking, I was left with a question that dug deep. What would it take for me to heal, too? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. It was a quiet evening, and the air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth, a soft reminder of the storm that had passed. Mia and I sat in her living room, surrounded by her artwork. It was a gallery of color and emotion, each piece reflecting fragments of her journey, the pain, the hope, the triumphs. The dim light of the lamp cast flickering shadows, creating an atmosphere both intimate and charged that I had taken the plunge, agreeing to help her prepare for an upcoming exhibit. I own a chance for her to step into the world again, to share her heart with others. Yet, the closer we got to the event, the more I felt the weight of my own fears rising. What if I let her down? What if I was not strong enough to bear the burdens we both carried? As she mixed paints, her delicate fingers gliding over the palette with a tenderness that mesmerized me, I marveled at how vibrant she seemed in that moment. I wanted to absorb her energy, to be a part of the light she exuded. But shadows still loomed behind her. "Mia," I ventured softly, trying to gauge her mood. "Are you nervous about showing your work? It's your story, it matters so much." Her smile faltered for just a second, a crack in her armor that didn't go unnoticed. "It's terrifying," she admitted, her voice low. "What if people see the pain instead of the beauty? What if they don't understand?" I leaned forward, my heart aching for her uncertainty. "But what if they do understand? What if your story inspires someone? You have the strength, Mia. You've already come so far." Her gaze turned distant, a storm brewing behind her cerulean eyes. "Strength doesn't always feel like strength when you're fighting yourself," she whispered. I felt the tremor in her words, the weight of unspoken battles. The days drifted by, filled with an uneasy dance of preparation for her exhibition. During this time, she grew quieter, more withdrawn. The vibrant colors in her paintings began to fade, matted tones reflecting her restlessness. It was as if the canvas echoed her internal struggle, a mirror refusing to hide its flaws. As the exhibition approached, something shifted between us. The tension was palpable, cohesion fraying at the edges. I wanted to reach out and hold her, to reassure her that I was there, that she wouldn't walk this road alone. But every time I extended my hand, fear clutched at my chest. One fateful evening, as I watched her paint, a sudden wave of emotion washed over me. "You're not just the sum of your struggles, Mia," I said, my voice rising above the silence. "You are the strength that rises from them. You have to believe that." Her eyes flashed with sudden anger, and it was as if she summoned the tempest inside her. "Don't you dare simplify this," she snapped, the paintbrush shaking. "You don't know how it feels to be hollow, to live on the edge of the shadows." The outburst startled me. I recoiled, suddenly aware of the gulf between us. This wasn't the Mia I had come to know. This was a force of untamed emotion, the darkness threatening to engulf her. "I'm trying to help," I protested, hurt mingling with confusion. "I care about you. Caring doesn't fix people," she yelled, tears streaming down her cheeks as frustration turned to sorrow. "You think I can just paint away the pain? You think I can just ignite my spirit when it feels extinguished? I am just tired." Her raw vulnerability pierced my heart, and I realized how desperately she needed to be seen, to be understood, and yet there I was, caught in my own failures, clumsily trying to hold her up. Tension hung in the air, a thick wall between us that spoke louder than our voices. "Mia," but just as I opened my mouth to bridge that gap, her phone rang, breaking the moment like glass crashing to the floor. She glanced at the caller ID, her expression suddenly draining of color. It's my brother," she whispered, the breath escaping her like a trapped bird. Her hands trembled, and I could see the shift in her demeanor, fear creeping into her every move. For a moment, she stood paralyzed, a haunting stillness enveloping her. I reached out, placing my hand on her shoulder, grounding her as much as I could. "You can do this." "I'm here," I murmured, but a sense of dread wrapped around my heart. She answered the phone, her voice shaky as she greeted him. I turned away, unable to listen, but the weight of her silence grew thicker with every passing second. When she finally hung up, dread had settled deep in her eyes. "It's my mother. She's coming for the exhibition," she said, but her words felt heavy, laden with unspoken history. The air shifted again, the world outside fading into insignificance. I watched her, knowing suddenly that this moment was monumental. Who she was, who I was, the jagged pieces of our histories, they all seemed ready to collide, and I could feel the rumbles of something both terrible and beautiful poised to erupt. "Mia," I started, but she interrupted, her voice tinted with sharpness. "You don't understand what this means. She won't look at me the way you do. She doesn't see any strength." My heart raced as I took a step toward her, but then she retreated, pulling away from my outstretched hand. Promise me you won't leave, echoed in the recesses of my mind, mixing with the growing panic in the room. In that moment, as her past surged like a tidal wave, I realized that perhaps I had only scratched the surface of her pain. Yet, in the midst of it all, as she looked at me with a vulnerability that held a sliver of hope, I sensed a shattering within the confines of her heart, a chance for something profound, but also a potential for everything to unravel. What secrets were left to unveil? What shadows would the arrival of her mother cast? My heart raced, the world around us shifting, ready to plunge into the unknown. The days leading up to the exhibition dragged on, filled with an ache that settled in the pit of my stomach. The shadows in Mia's paintings deepened, much like the clouds rolling in before a storm. Despite my attempts to reach out, each time felt more fraught than the last. She had become elusive, a ghost flitting through her own home, a prisoner of her tangled emotions. On a particularly gray afternoon, the rain fell in steady sheets, blurring the world outside. I found myself in her studio once more, surrounded by half-finished works and the scent of damp canvas. The usually vibrant space echoed with silence. Mia stood transfixed in the corner, brush in hand, but spirit seemingly elsewhere, lost in thoughts I couldn't penetrate. "Mia?" I called softly, stepping closer. She turned slowly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if my mother comes and sees the real, Meta's hollow version of myself?" Moving to her side, I sought to find the right words. "You're not hollow, Mia. You're a masterpiece in progress. Your art speaks of your journey. Maybe it's time to show that struggle to the world." Her gaze flickered to the canvas, where swirls of color battled against muted grays. "But what if they see a failure instead?" she asked. "What if they think I'm not strong enough?" "You are the strongest person I know," I said earnestly, laying my hand gently on her shoulder. "And we'll face it together. No one else's opinion matters but yours." She exhaled slowly, her breath trembling as hope fought against despair. For the briefest moment, a flicker of light danced in her eyes, before being swallowed by her uncertainties. Then, an unexpected knock at the door shattered the moment. I glanced at Mia, whose face had gone pale. "Who could that be?" she breathed, panic creeping back into her expression. "I'll check," I offered, my heartbeat quickening as I approached the door. When I opened it, a gust of chilly air whirled in, bringing with it the unexpected presence of Sarah, the local art dealer we had spoken to, who expressed interest in Mia's work. "Hi, I hope I'm not intruding," she greeted, her bright smile infecting the dreariness around us. "I just wanted to drop off a few supplies you might need for the exhibition." With her surprise visit, Mia's tension seemed to momentarily lift. She forced a smile, the small warmth of Sarah's kindness melting through the layers of Mia's heaviness. "Oh, you didn't have to do that," Mia replied, her voice more steady. "It's my pleasure, and I can't wait to see your work on display." "I know it's going to be exceptional," Sarah continued, her enthusiasm brightening the room. "Do you mind if I take a look?" I caught Mia's glance, a flicker of insecurity flashing across her features. But by some serendipity, she straightened, the warmth of Sarah's unexpected kindness helping her break through for just a moment. "Sure. Let me show you," Mia said, her voice steadying. As she walked toward the easel, a fragile flame burned anew within her that I watched as Mia spoke with Sarah, pride threading through the vulnerability of her presentation. For the first time in days, she seemed alive, engaging about her work. The weight of our previous conversation lingered unspoken between us, but in that small moment, I dared to hope that she was finding a path back to herself. But just as Mia seemed to thaw, her phone chimed, slicing through the fragile atmosphere like a knife. The notification from her mother shadowed her smile, pulling her back towards the darkness. My heart sank, dreading the way the light was stolen yet again. "Sorry, I need to take this," she said quickly, stepping away. I could see the tension creep back into her shoulders, the fear flooding her eyes once more. "Yes," she answered. I forced myself to focus on Sarah, who was examining a painting with rapt attention, but my heart was heavy with empathy as I could only wonder about Mia's internal battles during that call. "Mia," Sarah called, her bright voice breaking through my thoughts. "This piece is stunning. I can see so much emotion in it. What inspired you?" I watched as Mia spoke to Sarah, her voice shaking but building with passion as she delved into her thought process. But I could see the storm still churning behind her eyes, the struggle silently raging as her mother's words loomed like thunder in the background. After what felt like an eternity, Mia returned, her expression obscured by uncertainty. "Sorry, that was just complicated," she murmured, but the way her voice trembled told me it was anything but simple. As the conversation unfurled, I realized that this moment, this fragile spark of connection, might be pivotal. The exhibition would arrive soon, and either way, she would have to confront her past. Before long, Sarah took her leave, sharing encouraging words and leaving behind the supplies like seeds awaiting rain. I lingered, wanting nothing more than to nurture Mia's budding strength, but fear held me back. "Mia," I said gently, "can we talk about what just happened?" She looked at me, her face washing over with familiarity now, like a memory we both shared in pieces. "What's the point?" She sighed deeply, each word heavy with frustration. "My mother is coming, and everything is about to unravel. I can't bear to go through that again." My heart twisted painfully. "But what if it's the moment you've been waiting for? The chance to reclaim your voice?" "Mac, you don't get it," she shouted, her eyes fierce with emotion. "What if she doesn't see what I've created? What if she only sees the girl who couldn't carry our parents' expectations?" Silencing my own fears felt impossible, knowing this was a tipping point for Mia. But instead of reframing her worries, I leaned in closer, my voice steady. "Then show her who you are now, not who she defined you to be." For an instant, I felt the weight of her gaze, as if she were searching for something hidden within me. But as the silence stretched long, shadows returned, encroaching around us. "All of this leads to heartbreak, Mac. I fear I won't have strength to stand when she shows up," she whispered, a softness breaking through her defiance. "Mia, you will," I insisted. But doubt swirled around us like a fog, thickening every breath. Before I could say anything more, her phone buzzed again, slicing through the moment again. Her eyes widened, and I knew, somehow, this was different. She looked at the screen, face going pale. "It's her," Mia whispered, terror creeping into her tone. "Mia," I reached for her hand, desperate to draw her from that precipice. But she stepped back, fear and uncertainty swirling in her eyes as she answered the call. "Mom," she said, her voice wavering, each word laden with a rawness that sent a chill down my spine. My heart raced, the confrontation looming as the past crawled from the shadows. As I stood there watching her, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, that the storm brewing in Mia's heart was ready to spill forth. And as she engaged in that phone call, something deep within me whispered that nothing would remain the same after this moment. What lay ahead, a rebirth or a collapse? I held my breath as I waited, lost in the shifting tides of emotion swirling around us. The room felt alive, charged with an inevitability that thrummed powerfully, even amidst the uncertainty that stretched like a chasm between us. The conversation deepened, an unraveling of Mia's long-held pain. I stood from a distance as Mia clutched her phone, her lips pressed into a tight line, each word that emerged from her mother's voice rippling through the air with toxic familiarity. It was as if the very walls around her were closing in, reminding her of everything she tried to escape. A paralyzed artist just like her mother's voice echoed through the phone, sharp and bitter. I felt a wave of anger surge within me, a fierce protectiveness for Mia overcoming every rational thought. I wished I could intercept the words swelling in that conversation as if they were a fog invading her heart. "Mom," Mia's voice cracked. "I'm not like you." The bespoken sentence hung in the air like a prayer, pregnant with hope and despair in equal measure. I watched as the tears she fought to hold back formed a sheen in her eyes, every tug at her heartstrings resonating painfully within the confines of our shared silence. Each time Mia's mother spoke, my blood boiled, a stark reminder of the struggles Mia had faced beneath that polished surface. "Mia? How can you say that to me?" Her mother's tone climbed high, cracking like glass, and I felt my own heart fracture with each fierce accusation echoing around us. That I stepped forward, inching closer, yearning to offer the solace and strength she desperately needed. She needed someone to stand by her, to fight for her to be seen as she was, complex, fierce, and immeasurably talented. "Mac," she said breathlessly, the despair spilling into her tone. I can't keep doing this. It hurts too much. Her free hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles whitening under the pressure. I could feel every fiber of my being pulled towards her, but this delicate moment was hers. She needed to find her voice in the chaos. Mia, breathe, I coaxed softly, every ounce of my heart willing her to be strong. She inhaled shakily, letting the air fill her with an almost imperceptible warmth, as if our connection could somehow sustain her. A quiet resolve danced in the depths of her gaze, battling the storm brewed by her mother's words. The conversation continued, and the intensity escalated. You've always pushed the limits, Mia. First with the art, and now you think you can just abandon your family and your name? Mia, I whispered, hoping she could hear me. You're not abandoning anyone. You're reclaiming your life. And then came silence from the other end of the call, a suffocating quiet that promised an impending storm. My heart raced as I saw the tension in her face boil into a rage that was incandescent, a fire I wished she would unleash. Mac, as she said with a fierce determination, cutting off her mother's breathless admonishments, I am allowed to be more than just your expectations. I am not your puppet. The declaration rang out. The catharsis resonated through the studio and echoed back to us, washing over like a tide of newfound confidence. Mia was breaking free. I could see it in the way her posture shifted, like a ship finding its rightful course in violent waters. But the retreat to light was only temporary. As Mia heard her mother's response, another wave of despair crashed down, the light almost extinguished by the cruelty of harsh words delivered from someone she once revered. I've already lost you, came her mother's voice, heavy with manipulation. You'll regret this, Mia. You'll always be a part of this family. Don't forget that. You will never be what you dreamed to be. Mia's face fell, pale as freshly fallen snow, and I knew I needed to intervene. Give me the phone, I said urgently, but Mia only shook her head. No, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. This is my battle. And while serene strength surged through her decision, I felt fear claw at my insides, a deep-rooted instinct urging me to protect her from the impending heartbreak. ID always admired her determination, but was she ready to confront the entirety of her past? Mia, please, I pleaded softly. But she stood rooted to the spot, her breath hitching with the weight of her mother's words. I have to finish this, she muttered, and turned back to the call, gray clouds swirling through her eyes. As she spoke her final words, they felt like a thunderclap that shattered everything we created so far. Mom, I can't live your life anymore. A deafening silence followed, thick with disbelief. I held my breath, every fiber of my being coiling with tension as I waited for a response, knowing it would either renew her spirit or threaten to drown her under the weight of their history. But just before the moment could resolve, Mia's phone screen flashed an ominous warning. Your call is about to disconnect. Oh no. The specter of abandoned thoughts erupted in my mind. Mom, Mia shouted, desperation enveloping her voice, as the screen faded to black. The sudden silence felt like the universe coming undone, a rupture that mirrored the cracks of pain deep within her heart. No, 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 she cried, dropping her phone as her hands shook, each breath trembling like a fragile feather caught in a windstorm. I didn't mean Tohad if she never calls me back. In that moment, as she crumpled against the wall, a surge of emotions visited me, spiraling into a whirlwind of confusion and heartache. The vulnerability shattered the stillness of the studio, splintering the hope I had clung to just moments before. Mia, I whispered, uncertain of how to tackle this fear that engulfed her now. You still have yourself. But her gaze shifted to the chaos around her, the remnants of half-finished canvases languishing in the corners, and beneath it all, that familiar shadow of despair crawled for the shadow that mirrored my own internal dread. I felt a profound sense of helplessness as she stood there, every fiber of her being clashing in a storm of grief and determination. It'll never matter, will it? She whispered, choking on her words. It'll never be enough. And with those words echoing in the space between us, I knew we stood on the precipice of something monumental. The revelation cut deep, thickening the air, charged with our shared pain. No longer was this solely about her mother's expectations. It was a tempest of self-worth that had taken root long before either of us stepped into this studio. As I reached for her hand, wanting to anchor her to the moment. The world outside still raged on, oblivious to the tempest unfolding within. But in that studio, amidst the silence threatening to swallow us whole, I felt the fleeting presence of hope stirring a tiny flame flickering stubbornly against the encroaching darkness that I didn't know what awaited us beyond this moment, or if she would find the strength to fight the shadows of her past. But as I looked into her tortured eyes, I understood that the real struggle was just beginning, and that perhaps this storm had to rage on before we could find the light. The tension in the studio felt like breathing in thick smoke, oppressive and unforgiving. My heart ached for Mia as she shuddered against the wall, the remnants of her mother's call crumpling her spirit like an old, discarded letter. "It'll never be enough," she murmured, her voice scarcely louder than a whisper. The words echoed with a blend of sorrow and anger that clenched my throat. "Mia, no," I said, reaching for her, wanting desperately to pull her into the safety of my embrace, to shield her from the storm of self-doubt that was threatening to drown her. But she shook her head, turning away, as if she were trapped beneath the weight of an unforgiving sky. "You don't understand, Mac. She'll always see me as a disappointment, a failure." Each word carved deeper into her, etching away at the light that had burned within her just moments ago. "That I do understand," I insisted, though the churning dread in my gut told me otherwise. I knew the pain of feeling inadequate, of standing perpetually in the shadows. "You're not what she says you are. You've created beautiful art that speaks truths your mother can't even begin to comprehend." Mia turned back to me, her brow furrowed in frustration. "Art? Is that what it is? Something I can cling to? Something that doesn't even match the image of what she wants me to be?" Her blue eyes shimmered, splattered with the essence of turmoil and heartbreak, yet I could also see the flicker of defiance. "You have to stand up for yourself, Mia." I could feel the fire in me blurring the lines between my emotions and hers. "You get to write the story of your life, if testing the weight of my words." She glanced down at the scattered canvases around her, a multitude of unfinished dreams, each filled with color, yet encased in a veil of uncertainty. The silence stretched painfully between us, a bridge of shared vulnerability that threatened to crumble at any moment. Then, as if caught in a sudden epiphany, she reached for one of the canvases, her fingers trembling with resolve. "It's all a risk," she said thoughtfully, her eyes now shining fiercely with determination. "But what if I tried to paint what I felt instead of what was expected? What if this pain was the beginning of something incredible?" The air around us crackled with raw potential. I watched as inspiration flickered to life within her, igniting an ember that could forge a path forward. The thought of her pouring herself into her art, the very essence of who she was, sent a surge of hope rushing through me. "That's it, Mia. You're allowed to explore yourself without any limitations." She nodded slightly, the tension in her shoulders loosening, if only for a moment. A soft smile curled at the corners of her lips, reminiscent of sunbeams breaking through storm clouds. With a breath that felt lighter, she set the canvas down and turned to me. "You really believe that?" My heart swelled with pride for her bravery. "I believe in you," I answered, and in that moment, I wished she could truly see how magnificent she was, despite the world trying to convince her otherwise. But just as that tentative hope began to settle, the vibrations of Mia's phone shattered the careful tranquility like shattering glass. She glanced at the screen. A familiar number flashed. Her mother tried to call back. Her breath hitched, and the light in her eyes flickered uncertainly as fear raced through her. "What if this is another round of accusations?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "What if this just pushes me back into that dark place?" I could see the flicker of indecision dance across her features. "Mia," I said gently, "you don't have to answer. You've already spoken your truth." But the tension in her face told me the opposite. The real battle was unfolding in her heart again. With shaking fingers, she tapped the screen and answered, the uncertainty brimming in her eyes. "Mom," she stuttered, and my breath caught in my throat as I willed the call to be different, hoping, praying it would not suffocate her newfound courage. Finally, her mother's voice blared through, sharp and unwavering. "Mia, you can't just hang up on me. We have so much to talk about." A storm brewed in Mia's eyes, a flicker of anger laced with hurt as hallowed expectations choked her spirit once more. I could see it, the way her body tensed, the vulnerability slipping through the cracks as she wrestled with her choices. "I'm not the little girl you can control anymore," Mia asserted, her voice growing stronger, laced with an edge of ferocity I hadn't heard before. "I exist outside your expectations." But the words ignited not only anger, but a shadow of heartache too deep to articulate. As the arguments raged on over the Lanisa tirade of blame, guilt, and manipulation, I wanted to reach out, to grab her hand, and pull her from the abyss that threatened to engulf her yet again. Instead, I remained a spectator in her personal struggle, aching to help, but knowing I had to let her face it. As if she could hear my silent plea, she clenched her jaw tight, tears spilling down her cheeks, unyielding and raw. "Mia," I whispered, but she didn't seem to hear me. Then, in the midst of the chaos on the other end of the line, something shifted. Her breathing deepened, and for a brief instant, her entire demeanor appeared to strengthen as she heard the soft sincerity of a moment I had once hoped to share. "I don't regret trying to find myself, Mom," she shouted, a hurricane of emotions crashing around her. "This is my life. You don't get to decide what it means for me." But her mother's sharp retort cut through the noise. "You think you can just uproot everything? You'll realize you're making a mistake. No one will stand by you." And in that biting moment, as her voice trailed off into the distance, my heart sank. I knew what was coming next, the echoes of rejection that fueled Mia's deep-seated fears. I held my breath, knowing this moment would define the narrative of her own story again. "Please, just tell me you love me, and I'll take this all back," Mia cried, her voice breaking, the last plea reverberating in the silence that followed. "I love you, Mia." But as the reluctant words escaped her mother's lips, the damage was already done. Before she could respond, the call ended abruptly. Her mother's voice vanished into the void, leaving nothing but a haunting silence in its wake. Mia stared at the screen, the glow pulsating over her face, her expression a complex tapestry woven with heartbreak and resolve. Maybe I don't need her love," she whispered, the depth of her revelation pulling at the seams of my heart. But as she sat there, lost in the space between acceptance and despair, a new ringing sound filled the room, hard and unyielding. It pierced the heavy silence, a stark reminder that there were other wounds to uncover, other truths waiting to be revealed. My phone vibrated, another call lighting up in the dimness of our sanctuary. Is it? Mia trembled, hope cautiously threading through her features. I didn't answer right away because there was something deeper, something I could sense would shake the foundation of everything we had built thus far. As I glanced down, my heart plummeted. The name displayed brought forth a heavy weight I could hardly comprehend. That I met Mia's gaze, the air thick with an impending sense of truth. Whatever was about to unfold could chain us in ways we hadn't anticipated. "Mac, who is it?" she pressed, voice trembling with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. In that moment, I understood that the journey to shore did not consist solely of healing. It was also about braving the tempest that awaited us. The future hinged on answers, but sometimes choices were the only voice one could wield in turbulent waters. I have to take this," I finally said, feeling both the trembling thrill of urgency and the undeniable weight of a secret that sought to break us open. I answered the call. I felt the stakes rise around us, beckoning the next chapter of our intertwined fate to unfurl. The phone felt heavy in my hand, the weight of it matching the growing tension in the air around us. I hesitated for just a second longer, the vibrant energy of our shared moment dissipating with each passing breath. Mia, her eyes wide with concern, searched my face, looking for answers I wasn't prepared to give. "I need to know what's happening, Mac. Is it your mom?" The thin layer of hope mingled with fear reflected in her gaze felt like an anchor tethering me to reality. "No, it's someone else." My voice barely broke through the fog wrapping itself around us. Unsure of how to proceed, I swiped the screen to answer, each second expanding like a balloon ready to burst. "Mac, is that you?" The voice on the line was unfamiliar yet oddly resonant, a woman's voice, trembling with urgency, laced with an unrestrained sorrow that sent shivers through me. "Who is this?" I asked cautiously, each syllable feeling as if I were unearthing a part of my past I had buried deep within. "It's Jenna from the hospital," she breathed, the tremor revealing no small measure of fear. "We need to talk about your father. We've discovered something important." The word struck me like a hard slap across the face, a jolt that pulled me back to a time when my world felt unsteady, foggy with grief and regrets that seemed impossible to heal. My father had been living with a sickness that we had tried to navigate as a family, only to finally concede to his eventual departure from our lives. Until now. Discovered what? My chest tightened as I felt every heartbeat pound against my ribs, an alertness swarming like bees around me. I can't discuss this over the phone. You need to come to the hospital. It's urgent. She paused, and I could feel her weighing the gravity of the situation. I won't sugarcoat it, Mac. It's about a chance. Mia's hand slipped into mine, grounding me back to the moment. Yet the brief connection only heightened the chaos swirling within me. I couldn't allow her to experience that same sense of dread that had clawed at the edges of my youth. Jenna, please tell me. Is it bad? Is it about his condition? Her next words dripped with something I hadn't anticipated. It's about a treatment. An experimental procedure, but it comes with risks. I can explain everything when you arrive. Just please don't make any decisions without understanding what's at stake. My thoughts became a whirlwind, an uncharted territory riddled with fears and wishes long buried. He'll be there, I finally managed, though each word felt like it was transforming into clay between my Finjursa structure built on uncertainty, waiting to collapse. As I ended the call and looked back at Mia, the air felt stifling once more. I have to go to the hospital, I said, my voice cracking under the weight of an invisible fight that raged within. Is it your dad? She asked quietly, her expression shifting from concern for herself to concern for me. The veil of her own hurt momentarily lifted. I nodded, unable to dislodge the fear lodged in my throat. Something's come up about a treatment. Each word scratched against the pain I carried over years. Years that felt distant but still loitered, choking the air. Mac, she murmured, reaching for my hand, squeezing it tightly. The gesture gave me strength. It was a reminder that we were in this together, that between the cracks of despair, light could still seep through, igniting our spirits. He'll be okay, I said, more for her benefit than my own. I just need to figure out what they mean by experimental. There's always the possibility, you know? As I stood to leave, that sunbeam of hope flickered in the recesses of my mind, casting light on the struggles of the past, but also urging me to move forward. Mac, don't give up. This could change everything. I smiled at her, knowing the battle ahead could break or forge me anew. I know it's a long shot, but maybe it's worth it. Yet the reality crept back in, settling heavily at the pit of my stomach. As I opened the studio door, the world outside stood in stark contrast, a bright day invading the dim confines of our recent heaviness. Mia, do you want to come with me? I asked, surprising even myself at the offer. Me? Her eyes widened, vulnerability surfacing once more. What if it's too much? Then we share the weight. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. She hesitated, the turmoil behind her gaze layered with fear and an undeniable longing for solace. But what if it's too painful? Even if it hurts, we'll face it together, I said, feeling an urgency I couldn't fully articulate. The past was fraught with sorrow, but there was a flicker, a chance to grasp at something more, whether it be healing, understanding, or simply the strength to carry forward. After a brief moment that felt suspended in time, Mia took a deep breath, stepping closer as though answering an unseen calling. Okay, let's go. But as we made our way through the bustling streets, pressing ever closer to the hospital, another unexpected call rang through my phone, a name I never imagined would cross my path again. Mr. Sullivan. The voice, one I hadn't heard in years, stopped me dead in my tracks, sending a shudder through the fragile peace we had built. I couldn't find the words as a chill crept through me, creeping into every corner of my mind. What could this mean for me and Mia? Standing under the oppressive sunlight, my heart raced with anticipation and dread, knowing that whatever was said next would unlock doors long thought closed and irrevocably alter the landscape of our journey together. The bustling streets seemed to blur around me as I processed the voice on the other end of the line. It was Richard, my father's estranged brother. Years of absence and silence build up like walls, impenetrable and suffocating. But his voice, though unexpected, forced those barriers to tremble. Mac, is that you? He asked, confusion evident in his tone. Yeah, it's me, I managed to respond, every part of me bracing against the tide of emotions crashing down. After all these years, he was back, a ghost I had tried to forget, resurrected by the urgency of my father's situation. That I heard about your father. I need to see you. There's something we need to discuss. His tone slowly shifted from uncertainty to apprehension. It's about the treatment. Those words, my heart stuttered. How do you know about the treatment? I pressed, the words spilling over, tainted with the fragments of mistrust forged in our family history. I have my ways, Mac. Please, just listen. It's important. I might have connections that could help, but you need to let me in. A plea laced with desperation echoed through the receiver, forcing me to recall the last time I had trusted Richard, a misguided faith that led to pain I couldn't bear to revisit. Mac? MIA's gentle voice pulled me back into the reality of her presence, her eyes searching for reassurance. What's going on? It's my uncle. The explanation suffocated me, as though I were giving voice to the ghosts that haunted our family. He wants to help with my dad. MIA's brows knitted together as she absorbed the turmoil reflected in my face. But you two haven't spoken in years, right? Are you sure you can trust him? A bitter chuckle escaped my lips. No, not really. He left us when we needed family the most. Now he just wants in because of the possibility to help my dad. It feels manipulative. But what if he's genuine? What if he really can help? Her voice softened, but behind it lay the urgency of concern for my emotional well-being. That I don't know, Mia. The weight on my heart grew heavier, torn between a sliver of hope and the caution fostered by my past. I'll have to think about it. Think fast, Richard said from the other end, because time isn't on our side. I can meet you at the hospital shortly. Just think about it. When the call ended, a silence swelled in its wake, heavy and loaded. I turned to look at Mia, who held my gaze steadily. What do you want to do? She asked. That I have to see him, I said finally, although dread coiled tightly around my thoughts. It's a chance to learn something I didn't know before. Maybe there's a reason he's back. No, if not for me, then maybe for my dad. Her hand found mine again, warmth radiating from her touch, an offering of steady ground amid the uncertainty. He'll be right there with you. Whatever happens, you won't have to face him alone. For a moment, her support bolstered my resolve. I headed toward the hospital, the bittersweet nostalgia echoing in the corners of my mind. There was so much weight attached to family, to forgiveness. But in the shadows, remnants of past hurt lingered, casting doubt about whether I was ready for whatever might unfold. As we stepped through the hospital doors, the antiseptic scent greeted us, a reminder of the many times I had walked these hallways with fear clasping at my heart. It made everything feel so real. Me, father, my uncle, and the uncertainty that swirled like a tempest within me. That we approached the reception desk, and my heart raced as I prepared to seek Richard out. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman with gentle eyes, noticed the beads of sweat forming on my brow and offered a warm smile. Are you here for someone special? She asked, her voice soothing. That I opened my mouth to respond when MIA's fingers tightened gently around mine, grounding me again. We're looking for a family member, she replied, the support she offered standing in stark contrast to the swirling emotions threatening to drown me. Room 312, the receptionist said. Your father is lucky to have you here by his side. Family is everything. Her words hung in the air, striking a chord deep within me. It was true. Family could be both a lifeline and a burden. How was I supposed to navigate this weighty mix? As Mia and I walked toward the designated room, I spotted Richard standing at the entrance, his silhouette stark against the muted hospital lighting. Time hung suspended, and for a heartbeat, I was paralyzed by memories of childhood indifference and old wounds. The past doesn't define you, Mia whispered, as if sensing my turmoil. You have the power to shape your future. Her encouragement beckoned forth courage I didn't know existed within me. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and stepped toward Richard. Mac, he said cautiously, trying to bridge the gulf that had opened between us years before. I know this is complicated, but before he could finish, the door behind him creaked open, and a nurse stepped out, eyes wide with urgency. Mr. Sullivan, we need you to come with us. It's about your father. Maw of dread met my gut, and I turned to Mia as panic danced in her eyes. What does that mean? The nurse cast a sympathetic glance at Richard, urgency evoking something primal in the air. Please, come quickly. And as we moved forward together, Uncle, past pain, love, and fear intertwining anew. Heart-stopping uncertainty gripped at the corners of my mind. Had the chance for healing just opened, or were we racing against a clock that had already begun to tick down? The corridor swelled with a frenetic energy, the kind that envelopes you when danger lurks just beyond a door, unseen but palpable. I felt something shift within me, the breath hitching in my throat as I squeezed MIA's hand tighter, as if to anchor myself in this turbulent storm. Richard followed closely behind, his usual self-assured demeanor cracking under the weight of impending dread. The nurse led us swiftly, her gait quick and purposeful, which felt both reassuring and terrifying. There was no room for questions. All I could do was take one step after another, each footfall echoing down the stark white halls. "What's happening?" I finally managed to ask, my voice strained as I forced the words out. "Is it serious?" The nurse looked back at me, her expression a mixture of empathy and professionalism. "Your father's condition has become unstable. We need to assess the situation and act quickly." 1,000 thoughts morphed and twisted in my mind. My father sick, weak, fragile. Images of his laughter from happier days flooded my heart, each memory a shard of glass slicing deeper as a new layer of worry coiled tightly around my chest. Mia leaned in closer, her warmth brushing against my arm like a whisper. "Breathe, Mac. You're not alone in this," she urged softly, grounding me amidst the spiraling chaos. The nurse paused outside room 312, glancing back at us. "He'll need you to wait here for just a moment," she stated, opening the door slightly to slip inside. It was a small sanctuary, yet it felt forbidding as light poured from within, flickering like the pulse of my father's heart. Richard stood beside me, tension radiating off his body. "I'm sorry for how things have been, Mac," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for you or your father to suffer." A part of me wanted to lash out, to hold him accountable for the years lost, for the void of absence he left in our lives. But something deeper gnawed at my heart, this urgency, this need to untangle the strands of our past in light of the uncertain future we faced. Seeing my father vulnerable stripped away a layer of the anger I had hoarded like a shield. Before I could respond, the door swung open again, and the nurse beckoned us in with urgency. "Your father is stable for now, but we need to discuss some immediate courses of treatment," she said, her voice stern but gentle. We entered the room one by one. My father lay in bed, a myriad of wires and tubes snaking like vines around him, painting a picture that was both familiar and foreign. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, yet when he caught sight of me, something shifted. A ghost of a smile flickered across his lips. "Mac," he rasped, the sound hoarse yet filled with warmth. "You're here." "I am here, Dad," I replied, my voice trembling with unshed tears. I moved closer, grasping his frail hand, the strength wearing away from the man I had once seen as invincible. Are you all right?" he managed, concern threading through his tone. The roles were almost reversed now, with him asking after my well-being instead of the other way around. "I'm okay," I lied, but it came out far softer than I intended. Richard stepped forward then, tension thickening the air between us as he braved the divide. "I'm here too, brother," he murmured, the sincerity of his words hanging like a question mark in the space between them. The silence stretched as my father's eyes flitted between us, reading the complex web of feelings that intertwined around each word unspoken. It was a painful gaze. How could he reconcile the brother he had lost with the son who could barely look him in the eye? "Why are you here, Richard? After all this time?" My father's voice trembled again, edged with confusion and accusation, and I could almost feel the scars beneath the surface resurfacing. "I want to help. I heard about your condition and thought maybe I could be of assistance," Richard replied. The weight of years hung on his every syllable. I felt the emotions simmering inside. Mean urge to defend my father swept over me. Richard wasn't deserving of a place in this moment. But as I glanced at my father, I noticed how the edge of his lips quirked just slightly, almost as if encouraging reconciliation, a desperate plea for connection that lingered like the song of a distant melody. Mia stepped lightly toward the other side of the bed, gently placing a hand on my arm as she caught the gaze I struggled to maintain. "Maybe this is what this moment calls for," she whispered, her words imbued with understanding. In that delicate atmosphere, The tension cracked ever so slightly. I inwardly cursed and blessed the brewing storm within our family. Caught between two opposing forces, the yearning for healing and the shadow of distrust looming large, we need to make plans, I finally said, breaking the silence with purpose. If there's a chance to improve his situation, Richard nodded, relief washing over his features. I've kept in touch with some doctors who specialize in this field. They may have options we haven't explored yet, but it's going to take trust between us. Trust, huh? I said, trying to hide the bitterness creeping into my voice. But it was a chance, a possibility twisted through uncertainty, yet framed by the hope that had often felt just out of reach. Suddenly, an alarming beep sliced through the oppressive air, and the monitors above my father's bedside began to flash erratically. The momentary connection we had begun to forge fell away, replaced by pure panic as the nurse rushed back in, her expression grave. "Everyone, please step back," she called, throwing the door ajar with urgency. "We need to evaluate what's happening. Move aside." My heart sank as I stepped away. The hope that flickered within me felt dimmed, pushed deep into the recesses of fear as Richard and I exchanged glances, wounds still too fresh, but now bound by something more fragile. In that moment, the realization struck me like lightning. Before we could heal, we might lose everything we had yet to uncover about family, love, and our own resilience in the face of uncertainty. Would I have the strength to confront the demons of my past amidst a crumbling present, or would the clock run out before we could write a new chapter together? The room fell into chaos as the nurse barked orders, and I found myself retreating into a corner, my mind racing with confusion and fear. The monitors screamed their discontent as my father's chest rose and fell in irregular patterns, a dissonance that mirrored the turmoil within our fractured bond. Mia stood close, her presence a tether to reality amidst the darkness encroaching on us, but even her steadfastness felt fragile against the panic flooding my veins. Richard hovered by the bed, his expression shifting from remorse to terror, as medical staff rushed into the room, each one a harbinger of uncertainty. I could scarcely hear their voices over the surge of my heartbeat, drowning out reason and filling my thoughts with harrowing possibilities. Somewhere deep down, I hated Richard for being there at a time when the stakes had never felt higher, and yet another part of me understood. This moment could define us, could reshape the future I feared was slipping through my fingers. "Get the crash cart," a doctor shouted as he positioned himself at my father's bedside, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Stand clear," someone else added, making it clear that the situation had escalated dangerously. We stood frozen in a tableau of dread, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and the stifling pressure of impending decisions. My father's face contorted, a flash of agony mingling with recognition, and amidst the chaos, he caught my gaze. Time seemed to stretch, bending under the weight of all that was unsaid, all the years as a son I had taken for granted. "Don't leave me," he mouthed, broken yet fierce. I opened my mouth to respond, but words felt futile, too weak against the storm looming just outside. Instead, I moved closer, squeezing his hand firmer, praying for strength that felt far beyond my reach. It was then, amidst the thrumming of the machines and the urgency of the medical staff, that I felt Mia's gentle touch on my arm again, as if her warmth alone could shield me from the cruel twists of fate. "Stay strong, Mac," she whispered, forcing me to hold her gaze. "He's fighting." I in the tumult, a quiet moment sprang forth. It was the kind I had almost forgotten existed. We were not just a family fractured by resentment, but a web entwined in love, grief, and an overwhelming bond that transcended the faults. As I stared at my father's crumpled form, a flicker of familiar defiance flashed in his eyes. This wasn't just about survival, it was about connection. Richard's voice broke through the din faintly. "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have come sooner," he mumbled, genuine regret lacing his words. "Stop it. Not now," I snapped, taking a step toward him, driven by the instinct to protect. But as his eyes bore into mine, I halted. There was a plea, a longing for understanding etched deep into his expression, one that mirrored what I felt. The doctor barked commands, and as they worked, I became acutely aware of the world outside the bubble of my father's room. Each passing second stretched on inexplicably, diminishing my hopes with its relentless march. Collectively, we held our breath, But the buzzing uncertainty filled the air like static electricity. Suddenly, with a final set of beeps and a flurry of activity, a wave of calm washed over the room. The monitors steadied, their rhythms aligning in a fragile semblance of normality. He stabilized. A nurse announced, her voice tinged with cautious relief. A collective sigh escaped our lips, punctuated by the quickening breaths of those who had been holding onto hope with aching desperation. I looked around at the faces, each stricken by the underlying sorrow, yet gradually shifting toward relief. Richard, still trembling, wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, a mix of gratitude and fear dancing in his eyes. Mia smiled softly, but I could see the concern lurking behind her expression, threads of worry woven through her strength. And then my gaze returned to my father, still pale but alive. He was facing a battle within himself, but in this moment, he was here, and so was I, perhaps for a reason greater than all the mistaken paths we had walked separately. As the medical team finished their checks, I saw something shift in Richard, a flicker of determination igniting within him, something I hadn't noticed before amid our tumultuous past. We owe it to him, he started, glancing between me and our father. To be here, together to forge a path forward, starting now. His words drifted through the air, not fully registering until I felt the cracks within me beginning to merge with possibility. You can't just say that and expect it to change everything, I retorted, needing to guard the fragile trust that still danced at the edges of impatience and fear. Richard nodded solemnly. I know, but I need to try. For him. For us. Before I could form a response, the door swung open, a figure stepping in that I never expected to see. Hannah, our father's nurse from years ago, with an inexplicable serenity radiating from her. I have news about a new treatment option, she said, meeting Richard's gaze with recognition and a knowing smile. It could change everything. I believe your father deserves the chance to fight this. The air shifted, charged with hope tinged by uncertainty. I exchanged a look with Richard, each of us brimming with unspoken questions, but also the slightest inkling of resolve. As Hannah began to explain, the walls of mistrust slowly crumbling away, I felt a tremor of fear remerge within minute for my father this time, but for what this moment might lead us to confront. We were teetering on the precipice of a new beginning, yet my heart ached with the knowledge that the journey ahead would demand an excavation of truths buried deep beneath years of silence. But then came the revelation, tumbling from Richard's lips with a heaviness capable of shifting the earth beneath us. I need to tell you something important, something about Dad's illness. In that heartbeat, everything shifted. The clarity between hope and despair came rushing in like an inevitable tide, and I realized I was no longer just a witness to my father's journey. I was a player in an unfolding drama spurred by revelations that would unravel not just the past, but threaten the fragile bond we were beginning to mold in the present. As Richard spoke, the words fell like heavy stones into the delicate fabric what had begun to weave a tapestry rife with fear and hope, yet unsteady under the weight of buried truths. It's been hard for him, Richard began, his voice wavering slightly. He didn't just battle his illness alone. He struggled with the choices he made, choices that affected all of us. I felt a tremor in my chest, the past creeping back in, urging me to shield myself. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The treatment, he continued, his gaze locked onto mine. It's not just about the illness. It's about family and the mistakes we made along the way. There was a sincerity in his voice I hadn't felt for years. Your father wanted to protect you, Mac. That's why he kept so much from you. He didn't want you to carry the weight of our failures. The air thickened. I glanced at my father, still fragile but more present than he had been for a long time. What did you do, Richard? I pressed, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. I made choices that hurt him, he admitted, the tension of guilt striking a chord deep within me. But I'm here now because I need to make amends. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope our family can find its way back to each other before it's too late. Mia shifted beside me, her warmth a silent reminder that I was not alone in this maelstrom. I sensed her strength bundle with my own internal chaos, a grounding force, tethering my emotions to reality. What do you want us to do? I asked, my voice steadier now, although confusion still churned within me. What can we do? Richard stepped closer to my father's bedside, his hands trembling slightly as he placed them on the rail. I want to help him in any way I can. That's part of the reason why I've been distant. I was afraid to confront what I knew I had to face. But seeing him like this, I can't live with myself if I don't try to make it right. I looked between the two men, two sides of a shared coin, both grappling with the ghosts that loomed large in our lives. What about your connections? I asked. What treatments are we talking about? There was a palpable hope in my tone, yet a whisper of doubt lingered like the fading notes of a song whose melody I couldn't quite recall. Hannah stepped forward, holding a manila folder thick with papers. I spoke to some specialists, she said, her voice level and clear. They have new approaches, some of which may yield positive results. They're experimental, yes, but the advancements in medicine create hope, especially if you are both willing to get involved. The notion felt heavy in the air, every word wrapped in a hesitance that felt familiar. I wanted to grasp the hope she dangled before us, but every instinct screamed caution. I looked to Mia, the urgency of my father's life mingling with the intricacies of my past. What do you think? I asked, turning the question on her. She met my gaze with strength. I think that each challenge faced, no matter how painful, can lead to healing. If this treatment could give him a chance, it's worth exploring, right? The conviction in her voice was unwavering, igniting a flicker of courage within me. It's a risk, Richard cautioned, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Life is a risk, I replied. Staying stagnant in pain won't help us rebuild. My father wrinkled his brow in subtle acknowledgement, and my heart raced as I made my decision. Well, try, I said, locking eyes with Richard. But under one condition, you have to commit to this. No more running away when things get tough. If we do this as a family, we do it together. Yes, he replied, a flash of relief breaking through his tension. The nurse returned, her presence shifting the atmosphere, again a reminder of the urgency at hand. Let's gather the necessary information and bring in the specialists to discuss the potential treatment options. Time is of the essence. As we moved on, a new sense of direction filled the air, birthed from choice and collective courage. Though the specters of the past hung heavily, I was beginning to feel the faintest echoes of something more profound. The possibility of connection. I held Mia's hand tighter as we moved, knowing that every step forward was a fragile thread woven into a delicate fabric capable of unraveling. Yet each strand bore the power to strengthen and unify if we truly embraced the journey ahead. But just then the unexpected happened. A nurse burst through the door, her expression taut with urgency. Mr. Sullivan, it's your father. His vitals have dropped. He needs immediate attention. The wind was knocked out of my lungs as dread consumed me. No, please, I shouted, pushing past everyone, every instinct urging me to run to him. As I crossed into the room, confusion and chaos surrounded me, but all I could focus on was my father. He lay there, frail and pale, a muted whisper of the man who had once held me close when the world felt too heavy. The defibrillator began to whir, a stark reminder of how tenuous life could be. Get back, the nurse shouted, clearing space. Time slowed to a crawl, seconds stretching like eternities until the surge of energy surged between the two metal pads, and my father convulsed. I felt my heart race, a chaotic rhythm pulsing beneath my skin. Then, just as suddenly, a frail gasp cut through the noise like a knife. Mac, he whispered, his voice trembling. I rushed to his side, my breath catching in my throat. Dad, I'm here. I'm right here, I managed to say, grasping his hand. My heart pounded in my chest. Don't leave, he trembled, but his gaze anchored me to the moment. Trying. A torrent of emotions crashed down around me. As with each word, I could hear the echo of all the moments that had defined our lives. Fear and desperation blended with hope. You're not going anywhere, Dad. We're going to fight this together. You have to hold on. I'll stay, he murmured, tears pooling in his eyes, desperation mingling with love. And as the medical team stabilized him again, I realized I wasn't just fighting for a life. I was fighting for a legacy, for everything my father and I could still build together. As chaotic as that moment felt, there was an undeniable connection in the arrow whisper of hope woven amidst the fear, a path emerging from disarray. We weren't just risking everything. We were reclaiming the power of agency within our lives. Together, I repeated softly, the words reverberating in the air. I felt Mia beside me, a fierce determination rising through the chaos of crisis. We had chosen to stand, as one whoever came through the door wouldn't matter. It was us against the storm, united through tribulations with love as our beacon, guiding us home, every step along the way. And in the midst of uncertainty, I held tightly to my father's hand, knowing that love despite the shadows would chart the course we would need as we ventured into the unknown. No more running away, I whispered, and I watched as his eyes, heavy with pain, flickered anew with determination, because sometimes light found a way to pierce through even the darkest of moments. As the machine settled and the storm tapered, I felt Ida renewal, fragile yet fierce, and I knew we would rise again. Together, in the silence that followed, a weight lifted, and I felt wrapped in warmth, a promise echoing within the chambers of my heart. We're not done yet. We will continue to fight. And as the moments unfurled, a memory sharpened against the edges of what had been, leaving behind something profoundly beautiful, the understanding that in the heart of every storm, within each struggle, lay the potential for reconnecting the very fabric of family, hope, and love. We would rise, like phoenixes from the ashes together. And as I stepped back, I whispered the words that would forever reverberate in my heart: we are stronger than yesterday, and the journey isn't finished.